Hi guys, Olive here today to share my top novels of 2025. I read some great works of fiction this year, but there were 5 standouts. The best of the best that stayed with me long after I turned that final page. And I am so thrilled to be here to share those with you today. So what I'm going to do is talk about these in reverse order of how much I enjoyed them. So I'll start with my 5th favorite and then work my way up to talking about the number 1 novel of the year for me. Before we dig into talking about the books, I will give my annual disclaimer that these are simply books that I read in 2025. They weren't necessarily published in 2025, although in the case of this list, the vast majority of them were. Starting at number 5 on my list is The Rarest Fruit by Gaël Bellem, a historical translated novel based on the true story of a young enslaved boy who we have to thank for the now common flavor of vanilla. In the 19th century, on the Isle of Bourbon, which is now known as Réunion, which sits in the Indian Ocean to the east of Madagascar, there was a black child owned by a botanist who took it upon himself to discover the secret of pollinating a fickle orchid in order to unlock a flavor once treasured by the Aztecs. And he hopes, by doing so, he can earn the love of his master, who sort of acts like his surrogate father. But, just like what happened in real life, we do see that he succeeds in his goal, but that doesn't mean that the rest of his life goes smoothly. In fact, we see him stumble into adulthood and, for the rest of his life, try to reconcile his own poverty with the massive profits rolling in because of his achievement, enriching everyone but him. This is a short but haunting historical novel that is as gorgeously written as it is heartbreaking. Historical fiction was definitely speaking my language in 2025 because at spot number 4 on my list is Shy Creatures by Claire Chambers. This novel is set in England in the 1960s, and our main character works as an art therapist at a psychiatric hospital. And this story really kicks off when a patient arrives at this hospital who is not only completely mute, but he's been living isolated from society, completely without contact with the outside world for over a decade. And as our lead character is trying to figure out what this man's story is, how to best help him, she's also forced to confront some things in her own life that really aren't working. At the heart of this novel is the theme of loneliness, and the lengths to which people will go in order to not feel as lonely. I've seen many reviewers of this book have, frankly, warranted criticism of the main character because when we initially meet her, we find out that for quite some time she has been participating in an affair with a married man. That's obviously an unethical thing to do, but in no way does this book glamorize it. I think instead it tries to explain why some people do participate in affairs like that. And we can see, in our main character's case, that was her own feelings of isolation that initially drove her into this other man's arms. But because he's not hers, participating in this affair for especially as long as she has just serves to make her more lonely and more unhappy. And as she's working with this patient, trying to uncover his backstory, trying to heal some of his emotional wounds, she begins to patch up some of her own as well. This book is subtle, it's gentle, and it's unexpectedly heartwarming. My 3rd favorite novel of the year is one that just very recently took me completely by surprise. Canticle by Janet Rich Edwards is the story of a young woman in 13th century Belgium who is called to a religious life, but whose path begins to go in a very dangerous direction once she begins having spiritual visions and seems to develop the ability to heal the sick. Because of these abilities, people begin referring to her as a saint, which sounds great and all, but we quickly find out that although religious icons are revered in retrospect, once those people are simply figures within legends, being one in real time must have been terrifying. What with everyone envying you, respecting you, loving you, hating you, wanting something from you, wanting to be you, all at the exact same time, that would be overwhelming for anyone, but especially a teenage girl. We see that is definitely the case for our main character in this book, but we also see her go through a remarkable transformation as a young woman. We see her come into her own, harness her own power in the limited ways she can, but we also see her get help from some other female characters that she meets along the way. I thought this book was incredibly empowering and moving, even as it was simultaneously evoking feelings of helplessness and confusion. We're getting to the best of the best here, because my second favorite novel of 2025 is one that's been huge this year, Heart the Lover by Lily King. This is a work of literary fiction that is simultaneously a prequel and a sequel to her previous, very successful novel, Writers and Lovers. In this book, we see the character of Casey as a younger woman, attending Duke University, getting tangled up in a love triangle, and developing a passion for creative writing. We then jump forward, post the events of Writers and Lovers, to see how Casey is doing as an older woman when these two men she once had a love triangle with unexpectedly come back into her life. To put it mildly, I am a huge fan of Lily King. I've read everything she's ever published, and I truly believe that she just gets better and better with every book. This one has such depth of feeling, and it's so carefully written that I actually felt that it topped Writers and Lovers, which I also loved. I actually made an entire video review for this book. I put it out when this book was published. I talked about all of my feelings about this book and why I felt the publisher should have been a little bit more forthcoming about what this book actually is. If you want to hear more about this book, how I felt about it, I will link that video for you below and up in the cards. But now it's time to talk about the book in the top spot. And I am both surprised and delighted to report that a book I read right at the start of 2025, in January, ended up being one that no other novel could compete with as the year marched on. It's actually a lesser-known novel by a titan of American literature, Edith Wharton. Her book, Glimpses of the Moon, is my favorite work of fiction I read in 2025. This book is about two strapped-for-cash socialites who squeak by on the generosity of their wealthy friends, but who are kind of tired of living this way. So, after they befriend one another, they concoct a scheme to help them raise some funds. They decide that by getting legally married to each other, they would temporarily become a novelty in the eyes of their rich friends. They would get money from their friends. Their friends would also allow them to crash at some of their empty properties. And our two lead characters are hoping that this will provide them a little bit of a cushion. It'll buy them some time to make more permanent arrangements. The problem is that these two actually seem to love each other. But a couple of disagreements about what is or isn't ethical in this very odd situationship they have going on drive a wedge between these two characters. And throughout the novel, we can't be sure that they're going to find their way back to one another. What a refreshing journey this was to take with the normally very gloomy Edith Wharton. Now, I love her tragic books, don't get me wrong. The House of Mirth is one of my all-time favorite books. But even though there are some serious topics within this book, this is a romp in comparison to her other work. I mean, the social maneuvering of the two lead characters, this magnetic pull they feel toward one another, the playful condemnation of the rich and careless. This book is just as smart as it is fun to read. And by Edith Wharton standards, it's incredibly romantic. I think part of the beauty of this novel is that you can just enjoy it on a surface level, but also there's so much more substance to it. It provides the material for a deep dive if that's what you want out of this book. And that's precisely what I did after I read this. I made a video in which I talked about the plot of this book, the characters, their motivations, their strengths and weaknesses. And then I went on to compare this novel to a modern day audiobook reimagining of this story. I'm so happy with the way that video turned out because I feel like my love for this book just radiates off of that video. In case you haven't seen it, or if you would like to revisit it now that you know this is my favorite novel of the year, I will link that video for you below and up in the cards. But those were the novels that impressed me most in 2025. Please let me know if you've read any of the books I spoke about today. Do you have your own thoughts on them? Also, let me know if I've talked you into reading any of them because I would love to know that. You can also let me know what your top novels of 2025 were, because I am always looking for more good reads to pick up. Let me know any or all of that down in the comment section below. All of the books I did discuss today will be listed and linked for you in the description box below, along with links to any other videos I may have mentioned throughout this video. Also in the description box below, I've put a link to my Fiction Favorites playlist, which contains all the videos I've made over the years, talking about all of my fiction favorites from every single year I've had my BookTube channel. So be sure to check that out if you're looking for even more reading recommendations. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.